Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into a totally fascinating piece of automotive history. We're talking about a story full of underground legends, some seriously brilliant engineering, and a cultural impact that is honestly still felt today. We are looking at the legendary Nissan S13 Silvia and the incredible myth of the Sileighty.
So, let me ask you this right off the bat. Did Nissan actually sell a car called the Sileighty? It's a fantastic mystery, right? Because the Sileighty is undeniably one of the most recognizable Japanese sports cars of the entire 1990s. Yet, if you had walked into a standard Nissan dealership back then and asked to buy one, they would have looked at you like you were absolutely crazy. So how exactly does a car that technically didn't exist officially become a global automotive icon?
Well, the answer to that actually lies out on the underground mountain passes of Japan. See, drivers who were out there pushing their cars to the absolute limit in drift events would, inevitably crash, it happens, and they were heavily damaging their front ends. Now, the Nissan 180 SX was incredibly popular for this kind of driving, but repairing its complex pop-up headlights and the front fascia, that was getting really expensive. So, resourceful drivers realized something brilliant. Front-end parts for the Nissan Silvia were far cheaper. Plus, they were super abundant in junkyards just due to the sheer massive volume of them being sold and, crashed. Out of sheer economic necessity, they just started grafting Silvia front ends right onto their 180 SXs.
And honestly, the mechanics of pulling this swap off, they were surprisingly simple. You have the S13 Silvia on one hand, this sleek coupe with fixed headlights, and its mechanical brother, the 180 SX, which is a hatchback with those iconic pop-up headlights. Because they basically shared the exact same core chassis and mechanical foundations, the parts were perfectly interchangeable. It's like giant automotive Legos. Take the Sil from Silvia, the 80 from 180 SX, and boom, you have the Sileighty. Interestingly enough, some drivers actually did the exact reverse. They'd put a 180 SX front end with pop-up headlights onto a Silvia coupe, creating what the tuner world affectionately called the 1Via.
All right, let's back up a bit and jump into Section 1, the birth of the S13.
Picture this. The year is 1988. Nissan debuts the fifth-generation Silvia, officially known as the S13, and they market it under this banner called Art Force. They very deliberately targeted young men and women alike with its sleek, elegant, and really soft curves. Actually, it was so visually stunning that it literally won Japan's prestigious Good Design Award. It was an instant, undeniable object of desire that immediately shifted the entire automotive landscape.
But, the S13 wasn't just walking into an empty room. It stepped directly into a fierce rivalry. At the time, the reigning champion for that young, stylish demographic was the Honda Prelude. The Prelude was the ultimate date car, stylish, low-slung, but crucially, it was front-wheel drive. So when the S13 Silvia arrived, it challenged the Prelude head-on. It offered that exact same stylish date car appeal on the surface, but it hid the soul of a true sports car underneath. It boasted a rear-wheel drive layout that driving purists had practically been begging for. And this dynamic? It completely dethroned the Prelude.
Which brings us to Section 2, the anatomy of a hit. Let's look at the numbers. 300,000. That is the staggering number of S13 Silvias sold in Japan alone during its roughly 6-year production run. To put that into perspective, for a two-door sports coupe, that figure is absolutely astronomical. And it perfectly explains exactly why those junkyards were eventually overflowing with cheap replacement parts for those underground racers we talked about earlier. I mean, the car was just utterly ubiquitous.
So, why was it so popular? Basically, the S13's blockbuster success rested on 3 perfect pillars. First up, that award-winning Art Force design that was turning heads everywhere. Second, the highly coveted front-engine rear-wheel drive layout, at a time when most rivals were frankly adopting cheaper front-wheel drive platforms. And third, the economics. Starting at just 1.66 million yen during the Japanese economic bubble, this beautiful rear-wheel drive sports coupe was highly accessible to college students and young workers. Design, engineering, and economics just perfectly aligned.
Now, the absolute crucial piece of this whole engineering puzzle is that FR layout, front-engine rear-wheel drive. Why was this such a big deal for us? Well, because it offers incredibly balanced handling. The front wheels handle the steering, while the rear wheels handle all the power. When you combine this layout with the S13's amazingly lightweight 1.1-ton body, you get a car that is exceptionally agile. It responded beautifully to the throttle, which made it the absolute perfect accessible platform for the rapidly burgeoning sport of drifting.
Moving right along to Section 3, trims and engines.
So Nissan did something kind of quirky here. They used a highly memorable playing card naming convention for the S13's lineup. The tiers were divided into jacks, queens, and kings.
The Jax, or Jax, was your bare-bones base model. Lacking comfort features, it was ultra-cheap and basically perfect for budget buyers or those just looking to strip it down for motorsports. The Qs, or Queens, kept the naturally aspirated engine but added comfort options like power windows and central locking. That targeted everyday drivers and that lucrative date car market. And finally, the Ks, the Kings. This top-tier trim featured a turbocharged engine aimed straight at serious sports driving enthusiasts.
Under the hood, things evolved pretty dramatically over the S13's lifespan. The early models from 1988 featured the 1.8-liter CA18 engines, offering 115 horsepower naturally aspirated, or 175 horsepower if you got the turbo. But the real game changer? That arrived in 1991. Nissan introduced the now legendary 2.0-liter SR20 engines. The turbocharged SR20 DET pushed out a massive 205 horsepower. Keep in mind, in a car weighing only 1.1 tons, that power-to-weight ratio meant this late-model King trim was an absolute rocket ship, totally cementing the car's legendary status.
And that brings us to Section 4, the Custom Culture Legacy.
Which brings us right back full circle to an incredible piece of automotive lore. What started out as underground racers creating the Sileighty purely for cheap repairs soon just exploded in popularity because, well, it looked so uniquely cool. Drivers were building them everywhere. Then, something absolutely crazy happened. An Nagoya-based tuning shop named Kid's Heart recognized this massive trend, and they actually partnered directly with Nissan. Together, they produced 500 limited edition, officially sanctioned Sileighties that were sold right through select dealerships. A makeshift underground repair was officially legitimized by the manufacturer itself. No way, right?
But the S13 story didn't just end when production officially stopped in 1993. In 1995, Japan deregulated its strict automotive tuning laws, which suddenly made customizing cars much more legally accessible. Furthermore, when Nissan released the S13 successor, the S14, it was physically larger and heavier, which a lot of driving purists really disliked. Actually, because of this, the lightweight, perfectly balanced S13 remained in incredibly high demand for tuners, engine swappers, and drifters well into the 2000s. It turned from a contemporary hit into an immortal classic.
Today's automotive landscape is filled with vehicles that are increasingly heavy, highly complex, and vastly more expensive. The magic of the S13 was essentially a perfect storm. Beautiful design, lightweight rear-wheel drive balance, and a price tag that young enthusiasts could actually afford. So it leaves us with this pretty provocative question to ponder. Will the automotive industry ever align to give us another perfectly balanced, affordable sports car, quite like the S13, ever again? Thanks for watching The Explainer, and we'll catch you next time.